This week, Don Lemon put on a masterclass in interviewing when he sat across from Elon Musk and debated some of the biggest issues of our times. The battle played out much like an old-school prize fight, Don Lemon acting the part of Muhammad Ali to Elon Musk's George Foreman. Don Lemon really appeared to embrace the dope part of the rope-a-dope tactic, deploying a patented strategy of willful ignorance, selective deafness, and moral preening. This dazzling array of stupidity flustered Musk, who appeared to have only prepared to defend himself against an intelligent and competent journalist and not a political hack wearing faux Rachel Maddow glasses. Lemon stated that he knew his victory was complete when Elon Musk decided to cancel his new show on X before the first episode even aired. As always, I am in awe of Don Lemon's ability to play 4D chess by getting fired from a platform that literally anyone on the street could sign up for. The Fourth Estate only ever sends their best. I'm Tyler Chrestman. Welcome to the Chrestman Conversation. Okay, so as you were able to gather from the intro, today we're going to be talking about Don Lemon and Elon Musk, this interview that was going around the internet the other day from Don Lemon's new interview show that he's going to host. We're going to talk about everything around that. We're going to talk about the interview. I want to go over a couple more viral moments because here's what I find interesting about these type of interviews. I watched it. I watched the whole thing, so you don't have to. Don't worry. I took out the good bits. We're going to play some clips from the interview. We're going to discuss them. But you don't have to go and waste an hour and 6 minutes of your life watching this video. I did it for you. You're welcome. The thing I find interesting about an interview like this is that when you look at the interview and you look at all the people who shared it and you look at all the comments, what you find is that there are groups of people who can view the same material and come away with a totally different understanding of what took place. And I find that fascinating. I watched this interview in its entirety. It's an hour and 6 minutes long. I watched the entire thing. I did it yesterday just to make sure I pulled out the parts I wanted to talk about and pulled my own clips. The thing that I find fascinating about this entire interview is the people who watch the interview and somehow think that Don Lemon comes across as the victor in the conversation, or that he comes across as the person who looks good, or that he somehow got a gotcha moment on Elon Musk or made Elon Musk look foolish. Trying to be charitable, I still can't understand how people do that. How you come across with the idea that Elon Musk had the patience of a saint during this interview, because Don Lemon, the entire interview, is smug. He's condescending. The part I say in the intro about the selective deafness, I don't know if he couldn't understand what Musk was saying, but he routinely during the interview kept asking him to repeat himself, and he'd go, "What? Huh? What was that? What'd you say? What was that word?" I don't know what that was. And the idea that somehow he brought out all the facts and just disputed or refuted anything that Elon Musk said. I don't know what he's talking about. He kept saying one of my favorite phrases, as we know here on the Chrestman Conversation, one of my favorite phrases, studies show this and that, studies show, and we're going to talk about several times that he did that, where I would have asked, what studies? What are you talking about? Because you're just saying something and acting like you know all the evidence by heart. What are you talking about? We're going to go into that, but Don Lemon was fired from CNN. CNN has terrible ratings. He was fired. He had some missteps. I guess he made some sexist comments, and he is gay and he is black, but they did find a reason to fire him because he offended women. So he's not very likable from personal accounts of people who seem to have known him. He seems like not a nice person, but he always had this show, the Don Lemon Show, or the Lemon whatever report, whatever they call it. And now he's coming with this new show on X. That is the idea. And I think it's just called the Don Lemon Show. But it's an interview show where he just has people on and interviews them. He's a terrible interviewer. It's just a bad interview that he conducted. I don't understand who thinks that Don Lemon is a very good interviewer. He's not. Just in terms of a person who asks questions for a living, he is not good at that job. He just isn't. So I don't know who decided that this was the best course of action for him, but this Don Lemon show is supposed to premiere on X. He supposedly had a deal in the works with Elon Musk, and the first interview he had was with Elon Musk. And we're going to play some of the viral moments right now, and then we're going to talk about them and some of the things that they go over in the interview that were going around on the internet. And we're just going to jump into it. We'll do that first. We're going to play our first clip here. And some of these clips I'm going to play, actually let them play out. They're not just going to be little sound bites. I'm going to play a minute or 2 minutes of the interview just because the whole context is needed here. So here's the first one we're going to play. This is the first time they really get into it in the interview.
Yeah. Do you agree that it's right now and that it's moved into sort of MAGA land?
No, I don't.
When he says, do you agree that it's right now, he's talking about, he said that Twitter has become more right-wing. That's the context of what they're discussing.
Theory?
I certainly don't think it's right. The old school Twitter suspended and suppressed accounts that we would call on the right 10 times more than they did accounts on the left. And even when they did suspend an account on the left, it was because of arguments between two people on the left. The political donations of old Twitter were 99% Democrat. Does that sound left-wing or right-wing to you?
The Twitter donations?
Yes. You know when they look at donations from a company? If a company donates literally 99% of all donations are to Democrats, does that strike you as a left-leaning or a right-leaning
You mean the company donated? I understand what you're saying.
What I'm trying to tell you is that Twitter employees, people at Twitter, their political donations were 99%, literally 99%, to Democrats. That's obviously an extremely left-leaning group.
My question, too, leading into this is about MAGA.
So that's the first little clip that I want to play there. So what they're talking about is Don Lemon said that Twitter has become MAGA country. It's become much more right-wing. And Elon Musk then points out that, well, no, it's not true that Twitter is all of a sudden right-wing. What is true is that it no longer is left-wing. When he says that they suspended accounts on the right 10 times more than accounts on the left, this isn't because people on the right are 10 times worse than people on the left. It's because Twitter, the Twitter employees, 99% of them are Democrats. 99%, they're saying, of all the donations made by Twitter staff went to Democratic candidates. And again, this is something I don't understand how Don Lemon doesn't understand what Elon Musk is talking about here. When I thought it was very clear when he says 99% of all Twitter donations went to Democrats. And Don Lemon goes, what? What? Not 90? What? And he says, when they track a company and who the people donate for, they went 99% to Democrats. And he goes, oh, you mean the Twitter is donated? And he said, no, what I'm saying is the employees who ran Twitter, 99% of all the donations that they made went to Democrats. And Don Lemon's like, oh, okay, well, let's move on. So I've heard this argument about Twitter, X now, X being more right-wing now. It's not true. There was a problem at X of shadow banning Republican accounts. So conservative accounts, you wouldn't see their content because they were suppressed. They were shadow banned. A lot of times they were actually just banned outright. But this idea that when Elon Musk took over, initially what you saw was conservative and Republican-leaning accounts. The amount of traffic that they got began to grow substantially, very quickly. So what you saw a lot of the times is as Republican accounts grow, if you were looking at a chart of it, they would grow, and the ones that got big, they grow, and then they hit this plateau, and they just stop. Because once they got to a certain level where X, or Twitter, as it was known then, began to recognize them, they would throttle their accounts. And so you see these follower growth curves that just go up and up and up and up and up, and then when they hit a certain level, they plateau, and they just stop. And that happens for most conservatives. After Elon Musk took over, you saw, again, the Republican accounts go up and up and up and up because they were being allowed to circulate and actually their content was allowed to be seen. But when he says, well, it's become right-wing, no, it hasn't. What it's become is neutral. And when it's neutral, the right-wing accounts are as popular as accounts on the left, and therefore it's even. It's not that it became right wing. It's that it's just no longer left wing. But Don Lemon doesn't seem to understand that, and he refuses to want to understand that is the other thing. It's not that he can't understand it. It's just that he doesn't want to. He's not interested in understanding it. And so you could see right there what I'm talking about when I say selective deafness and nonsense. He's not trying to understand the point. And then when Elon Musk makes a point, instead of every time, this is the other thing he would do. When he felt like Musk didn't have a good point, he was driving towards him and he would come at him. But every time Elon Musk actually made a good point about something, he would then deflect and talk about something else. And so anytime Don Lemon's ideas were pushed back against, he moved topics. Anytime he could push back on Musk's ideas, he refused. And he did this several times. I had a clip here pulled, but I decided not to use it. He asked Elon Musk a lot about his ketamine usage. He says that he started asking him about it. Oh, I heard you have a prescription. You said you have a prescription for ketamine. And he said, I do. And he said, well, what's that about? What's that prescribed for? And Elon Musk actually says, well, it's a little invasive to ask someone about a medical prescription that they have. But then he proceeded to talk about it anyway. But it was such a weird moment in the thing where for 5 to 10 minutes of this interview, they talked about Elon Musk drinking or doing drugs or using ketamine for no reason. It was very strange. Elon Musk says, I don't drink and I don't really smoke pot. He said, I really only smoke pot a couple times in my life, once very famously on Joe Rogan, but he's like, I don't really smoke pot. He said, I use ketamine because it was supposed to help me with my depression, and it's under medical supervision. But it was this very weird little thing that Don Lemon did. Anyway, we're going to move. I want to get through it. I got 3 or 4 of these clips, so I want to play some more. Here's our second one we have. This one I'm going to play a little bit longer than the last one.
Can we talk about the great replacement theory now? Some of the things that you post, the great replacement theory, you claim that Democrats, President Biden's immigration plan to open up the border, you said that the president is getting, and Democrats are doing it to get more votes. But undocumented immigrants cannot vote in federal elections, so how is that possible?
Right. Well, you're conflating two things. One is great replacement theory. The other is, which I don't subscribe to that. I'm simply saying that there is an incentive here. If legal immigrants, which I think have a very strong bias to, at least early on, right, it's a very strong bias to vote Democrat, the more that come to the country, the more they're likely to vote in that direction. But it is, in my view, a simple incentive to increase voters, Democrat voters. And yeah, so your question is like how? So there's a few ways that this works. One is that when the census is done, the census is based on all people in an area, whether they are citizens or not. So if there are a concentration of people who came here illegally in a particular state or in a particular state, that state will actually then get an increased number of House seats. So the House seat apportionment is proportionate to the number of people, not the number of citizens. So the illegals overwhelmingly go to places like California and New York, and if you just look at the math, if you look at the apportionment with and without illegals, I believe California would lose. I believe the blue state, there would be a net loss of blue states of approximately 20 seats in the House. This also applies to the Electoral College. So you say, like, well, this also applies to electing the president, because the electoral votes are also done by apportionment the same way that House seats are done.
But the reason, Elon, the Electoral College is in place is to balance that, is so that doesn't happen. So what you're saying about it is the exact opposite of the reason why the Electoral College is there. The Electoral College at this point, in our history, gives people who are in smaller states and red states much more of an influence over our elections than people who are in blue states, and the majority of the people in this country. That's what the Electoral College does. It actually does the exact opposite of what you're saying. It protects people who are in smaller states and protects people who are in red states.
Well,
the red states, because they tend to be smaller and less
Okay, so a couple things here. I played the Don Lemon response because I want to respond to that. But Elon Musk is exactly right here. But he's even missing a couple things. So they talk about the great replacement theory. First of all, this little section goes on for 10 minutes where they talk about this topic. And Don Lemon keeps talking about the great replacement theory, which Elon Musk flat out says, I don't subscribe to that, right at the beginning. That's what he says. I don't subscribe to the great replacement theory. For those people who don't know, it's now being used in a couple different ways, but the great replacement theory basically is an anti-Semitic, the origins of it is anti-Semitic. The idea being, it used to be that the Jewish cabal that runs the world, they were trying to get more people to immigrate to America to either undermine democracy or take control of democracy. It never made a lot of sense to me. When it is used in a different way, it makes some sense. So the way Elon Musk is talking about it, which is that the great replacement theory being that Democrats, because he says later in the interview that he doesn't understand what the point of, or what the incentive would be for Jewish people to want illegal immigration. He said, I don't even understand what that means. But what he's saying is when you use the great replacement theory in a different way, in a way describing the Democrat action, it actually does make sense because all you have to do is look at incentives. So why do Democrats want illegal immigration? Well, one is the reason that he just said. It was ruled unconstitutional that you can ask about citizenship on the census data. So the apportionment of House seats is actually a big deal when you're including illegal immigrants. If they go to blue states, then all of a sudden the blue states get more power in the House of Representatives. Right now, the Republicans have, I think, a 3 or 5 seat majority in the House. Could you imagine if they had a 23 seat majority because we're not counting non-citizens on the census? We're counting just people who actually have a right to vote and actually deserve to be represented by their government. So that's what he's saying. That's first thing. And that is absolutely true. 100%. The thing about the Electoral College is Elon Musk is kind of right and Don Lemon is kind of right, but Don Lemon is mostly wrong and Elon Musk is more right. And what I mean by this is the Electoral College is determined, again, by apportionment based on the census data. The Electoral College is designed to balance the small states against the big states. It is a representation of the states' rights. That's what the point of the Electoral College is. It represents the state's interest in the presidential election combined with the popular vote in a way, meaning that each state is treated as a separate election. Okay, so that's the point of the Electoral College. You have to win the majority of the states. It's the balance between the people's rights and the states' rights. That's what the Electoral College is about. So it does. It balances because you have to win the small states and the big states. The thing that Don Lemon gets wrong is that the Electoral College is still apportioned by the census. So when Elon Musk says, well, it also determines presidential elections, it's true that the point of the Electoral College is to balance the small states versus the large states. However, it is also true that each state has a certain amount of electoral votes for president that are proportioned by the Senate, or by the census, not the Senate. So when they're saying, and I don't know, actually, we'll look it up real quick because I am curious now. So, for example, if you were to just search real quick the 2020 Electoral College results, okay? So the winner was Joe Biden, who won 306 votes in the Electoral College. Donald Trump got 232 votes in the Electoral College, okay? But here's the thing. Number of electoral votes for each state. So, for example, just the first couple. Alabama has 9. Alaska has 3. Arizona, 11. California has 55. Now, imagine if, and again, I'm not saying this would have swung the last election, but imagine if California had 48 and Alabama had 15, okay? So you start seeing how the math plays out a little bit differently about how many states you need to win and where at. That's the entire point that Elon Musk is making about how illegal immigrants can influence presidential elections. I have another one, which is to say, imagine that you don't think in terms of 1 to 2 years. An illegal immigrant comes across the border, and you say, well, that the Democrats are incentivized because illegal immigrants want to vote Democrat. Well, they say, but illegal immigrants can't vote in federal elections. Well, okay, that's true. There are also municipalities in state and local elections that allow illegal immigrants to vote. But how about this? The second that those people have children, those children in one generation, more likely than not, vote Democrat. So all you have to do is look one generation in the future to realize that if we let 10 million illegal immigrants in, you say, well, none of those people can vote. Well, 10 million children could vote. 10 million children in a couple election cycles. So if Democrats are using their forward-thinking hat, that's all you have to say. They're saying, oh, that's how illegal immigrants can win elections for Democrats in the future. And now they can win them power in the House. Could you imagine what the Republicans could do if they had a 25-seat majority in the House right now? Right now they're fighting. They're infighting. They ousted Kevin McCarthy as the speaker because he couldn't get the votes to stay in because he only had a 3-seat majority. So the second he lost 5 people on his side, he was out. But could you imagine if they had 25 people, what their agenda would look like in Congress? It changes the entire legislative agenda. So Don Lemon is just completely wrong. But again, he does that thing where he goes, oh, Elon, let me tell you all the reasons that you're wrong in my condescending, smug voice, even though I won't actually address the first point, which you're 100% correct about because there's no refuting that. And I'll instead nitpick at the second point and put you on the back foot. Just a terrible interview. This next part I want to play is actually my favorite, I think, from the whole thing. I don't know if I have the whole thing pulled up. It's about how long you really want to play the clip because Elon Musk goes pretty hard on this one, which I like. But here's the next clip. We'll move on.
Well, that's not what the study shows. And you said you like transparency. I'm going to show you this. And
No, you can get a study that will tell you whatever you want.
By the way, that's exactly what I always say. You can point to study after study after study that just, if you read the headline, will support whatever stupid point you want to make. And Don Lemon with his little turned around like, well, that's not what the studies show. It's like, okay, well, Elon Musk correctly points out you can find a study that says whatever bullshit you want it to say doesn't make it true. Anyway.
These are just a handful of extremely, you look at those anti-Semitic and racist tropes and tweets, and as of this morning, they're still on X. And from your own content policy, these posts should have been deleted. So why haven't they been deleted? Why are they still there? Did you?
We delete things if they are illegal.
But these have been up there for a while.
Are they illegal?
They're not illegal, but they're hateful, and they can lead to violence. As I just read to you, the shooters, in all of these mass shootings, attributed social media to radicalizing.
So Don, you love censorship, is what you're saying?
No, I don't love censorship.
Then why are you asking?
I believe in moderation, but I don't believe in
censorship. Moderation is a propaganda word for censorship.
But don't you think free speech is one thing, right? Or not,
Look, if something's illegal, we're going to take it down. If it's not illegal, then we're putting our thumb on the scale and we're being censors.
You're putting your thumb on the scale for moderating hate speech. I mean, you don't put out child pornography. That's not...
It's illegal.
Some people would say that's considered censorship. I'm just saying, you...
No, I literally said, if something is legal...
He's such an idiot.
Okay, we will obviously remove it.
Okay.
But if it's not legal, the laws in this country are put forward by the citizens. We're a democracy. If those laws are put in place by the people, we adhere to those laws.
Okay, I agree.
Laws of others. If you go beyond the law, you're actually going beyond the will of the people.
Okay, agreed with the law. But if you are doing something that promotes hate and violence and ultimately leads to killing, you don't feel you have any responsibility not to do that? When the people who are doing it admittedly are saying...
There's articles all the time that lead to violence and killing. Don't they? Shouldn't they? Like you're applying a differential standard to...
But that would never be in mainstream media. These types of images, that type of language, those things would never be. We'd never, when I was in mainstream media, we'd never promote things that would be anti-Semitic.
Okay, I want to address a couple things here. One, just how cool is Elon Musk right there for just having such a flat standard of what is and is not going to be allowed on X. The idea, and Don Lemon just either, again, willful ignorance or just not getting what he said. He said he showed him a bunch of terrible things, a bunch of anti-Semitic things, some racist memes. Okay, bad stuff, right? No one, I won't say no one because obviously some people out there like that, but such a small fraction of a percentage of people actually believe this kind of garbage. So Don Lemon shows Elon Musk these pictures, and he says, oh, what about this terrible stuff? And Elon Musk says, yeah, bad. He said, but we're not going to remove it because it's not illegal. And Elon Musk says, we only remove things from the platform if they're illegal. And Don Lemon says, well, these are still up on the platform. Elon Musk, well, are they illegal? No, but they're mean. And he said, well, they're not illegal. We're not going to do that. Then Don Lemon comes back with, oh my gosh, you're going to put your thumb on the scale. That's your defense, is you don't want to put your thumb on the scale. And Elon Musk is exactly right. He makes a distinction, and Elon Musk makes a mistake here, which is that there's a distinction. There's an important distinction between X and the mainstream media. And here's the distinction that most people are at this point should be aware of. There's a section of the Communications Decency Act. It's called Section 230. And in Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, it makes a distinction between platform and publisher. Don Lemon is treating X like a publisher, which it is not. X is a platform. And so what this means is that Don Lemon is trying to say that you should moderate, the propaganda word for censor. You should censor people for being mean and nasty. And Elon Musk is saying no, because Elon Musk understands, and he doesn't make this distinction clear enough in the interview, but he understands his job is not to be a publisher. He's not a publisher. People can post whatever they want. They publish themselves on X. They open themselves up to their own liability because they are the people publishing. He is just a platform that allows them to publish. It is an important distinction, because the difference is that the platforms are not responsible for the content that goes on the platform. They are not the ones that are held liable. You're held liable. If you post something that's illegal, if you post something that's nasty, it's not the platform. This is what the Communications Decency Act does. I think it's too broad. I think it should be repealed, but that is the point that Elon Musk is making. He is not a publisher. He is not endorsing every idea that is on X. His job is to enforce the law, which he says is the standard. The idea that the First Amendment is the standard. It is the legal standard in the United States. And he says, I will uphold the law. And then Don Lemon says, what about child pornography? He says, it's illegal. And Don Lemon said, well, some people would say that's censoring. No, they wouldn't, Don, you moron, you mental midget. What are you talking about? No one says taking child pornography off is the same as taking hate speech off. Who is saying that? Find me the person who's making that idiotic argument besides you, Don Lemon, because nobody is saying that. No one's saying that following the law is the same thing as censorship. We have laws. That's Elon Musk's whole point, is that there's a law. There are laws, there is case law around the First Amendment that dictates what you can and cannot say. I cannot threaten people. I cannot say, I'm going to come over there and murder you. That's actually against the law. I can't do that. That is a crime. It's the same as if I can't walk over and punch you in the face. I cannot threaten you. I cannot threaten an individual with violence. That is against the law. You can't do it. You can't, again, this is a stupid example because it's also not true, but the whole bomb in a crowded theater thing, that's a mistake. That's actually not true. Hate speech is not against the law. It's bad. It's ugly. It's disgusting, but it's not against the law. What is against the law are threats of violence. What is against the law are things like the child pornography thing. That's not a freedom of expression thing. That is a crime. You're not allowed to do that. You cannot just say, well, my First Amendment right says I get to post these naked pictures of online. Not true. That is not a thing. No one says that. hate speech, disgusting, bad, ugly, not against the law. That's Elon Musk's entire point, is that the first speech, or the First Amendment protects free speech. His platform caters to free speech. He will only take things that violate the law. Don Lemon just, again, willfully ignorant about the entire thing. And he kept saying, well, your own policies say this. And at different points in the interview, Elon Musk has to point out, what policy are you talking about? We don't promote, and this is the thing that he says, we don't promote hate speech. So what that means is those tweets, those, what are they, I guess posts now, those posts on X, they do not get promoted. They do not get advertising dollars next to them. That's basically what he's saying. We don't elevate them. We don't put them out. But you can put them up, but we're not going to necessarily allow you to monetize them on this platform. That's not what we're about. But again, it's just an incredibly stupid point that Don Lemon is trying to make. It makes absolutely no sense. This idea that, and calling him out for what he is, which is, he says in here, I wish I pulled it up. He says, you want censorship so bad you can taste it, which I thought is just hilarious, because his whole point is that Elon Musk doesn't want to be the arbiter of truth. That's what I would say too. If you put me in charge of X, I don't want to be the arbiter of truth. I'm not going to tell you what you can and cannot believe. It's not my job. Don Lemon would be that person. If you put Don Lemon in charge of X, he would tell you the information you are and are not allowed to see. And I know this because he is the same kind of person who's for that when it came to COVID, quote unquote, misinformation. The government was wrong all the time about COVID. They were wrong repeatedly. But what they did was they went to companies like Twitter and they forced them to take down posts that they didn't agree with, even if, in hindsight, the posts wind up being right. So it's ridiculous. YouTube did this, Google, YouTube, Facebook, all these companies that you wouldn't want to go along with this kind of thing. They all did. So they're all bad. And Elon Musk is just saying, I'm not going to do that. It's not my job. It's not my job to be the arbiter of truth. And the people like Don Lemon who want that responsibility, who would be that person, they're the bad guys. Because guess what? The people who censor things are never the good guys. Find me a time in history when the guys censoring things were the good guys. I just don't know when that time would be. I don't know those people. I don't know everything about history, but I'm pretty well versed in a lot of things. The guys who want to censor information and keep people from spreading it are typically the bad people. So that'd be Don Lemon. All right, moving on. Next one. Next one. This is actually the last one of the clips that I pulled up. So here we go.
Do you believe that people are dying because medical standards, DEI is causing medical standards to be lowered? Do you actually believe people are dying because of that?
I believe that if we lower the standards for what it takes to become a doctor.
You're saying if we lower the standards, yes. But do you believe people are dying because the standards are being lowered?
I don't think that is yes an issue, but it could become an issue.
Okay. But the actual evidence in history shows the exact opposite. If you look at how minorities are treated by the medical system, most doctors now are white. And there are lots of mistakes in medicine. So you're saying that white doctors have bad medical care? I'm trying to understand your logic here when it comes to DEI.
I'm actually real quick going to pause that. Of all the clips in this entire thing, of all the times in this entire interview, this is the time when Don Lemon comes across as the biggest moron. First of all, he said, well, the studies show that that's just not true. What are you talking about, Don Lemon? What do you mean? What do you mean the studies show? Have we done extensive research on DEI in medical schools throughout history? What are you talking about? He says, oh, well, look at how black people were treated in Tuskegee. Yeah, that was despicable. What is your point about DEI? What does that have to do with DEI? Everyone can say, yeah, that's terrible that happened. What is your point? That that's bad and therefore DEI is good? What kind of non sequitur is that? And then he says, well, most doctors today are white and there are still medical problems. So are you saying white people aren't good doctors? No, you moron. That's not what he's saying. The entire point, and he'll go into this in a second, I'm sure I'm just jumping ahead. Elon Musk's entire point about DEI in medical schools is that if you lower the standards for what it takes to be a doctor, more people will die because you are going to graduate worse doctors. That is such a basic, obvious point that it shouldn't need to be pointed out to anyone. And the fact that Don Lemon doesn't understand this is ridiculous. And it's like that with anything. If you lower the standards, you are going to get worse people who make it through. That's all he's saying. And Don Lemon says, well, the evidence shows that that's not happening. Okay. Elon Musk says, well, I don't want it to happen. Well, but if it's not happening, then why are you talking about it? I don't want it to happen. That would be bad. We have 300,000 people in this country a year who die due to medical mistakes. Medical mistakes are huge. Now, you say 300,000, that's a lot of people. This is true. But when you look at the fact that there are 350 million people in this country, and we have something like 1 million physicians in this country, then you're saying, okay, well, imagine that physicians see multiple patients every single day. So you're talking what amounts to tens of millions of medical interactions every single day. You're talking probably billions a year of medical interactions. And you have 300,000 people who die. You say, okay, it's not great. It's not great that anyone dies. But that doesn't seem like a lot when you put it in perspective of how many interactions there are with medical personnel every year for 300,000 people to die of medical mistakes. Elon Musk's entire point is, imagine that, and let's just use an obvious example. Imagine that you're in medical school, and medical school says you have to maintain an 80% average in all your classes and pass your boards with or your medical boards that you have to take at the end of the year. They say at a minimum, you need a 700 to be a doctor. And then next year they say, well, actually at a minimum, you need a 600 to pass your boards and get your medical license. Those people who wouldn't have graduated before will now graduate. Do you think they are more or less likely to make mistakes later in their career if they do not know the knowledge as well as their peers? Of course, it is so obvious they are more likely to make mistakes. That's his entire point. That's Elon Musk's entire point, and that is such an obvious point. What he's talking about, he goes on to talk about Duke Medical School. What the entire point was that their acceptance rate for people who join their medical programs it's the same problem with college admissions. If Harvard, for example, if Harvard went based off of academic achievement, 25% of everyone who goes to Harvard would be Asian. That is just a fact, that a quarter of the people who go to Harvard would be Asian based off of merit alone. They don't take that into account because they try and create some equity. And because of that, they accept more black people who have on average, lower test scores getting into Harvard than their Asian counterparts who got refused. So this has been going on for years in the university level. Elon Musk's entire point is that you don't want to do that at medical schools because medical schools are supposed to be about the best of the best who get in. That's the entire point. Don Lemon refuses to accept this. I'm going to play, I think, a little bit more of this clip. Let me just go into it a little bit. Oh, no, I just messed it up. Oopsies. Hold on. Let me find that real quick. Let me go back and find that real quick. I just messed up. 4312. So Elon Musk's entire point here is that if we do that, then the standards are going to be worse and you're going to graduate worse doctors. Here we go. Let me just play it from here.
Care? I'm trying to understand your logic here when it comes to DEI because there's no actual evidence of what you're saying.
No, I said, so if the standards, like let's say, I think that particular thing was referring to surgeons. Let's say a surgeon is asked to, a surgeon in training is asked to do a series of operations under the supervision of a senior surgeon, and they get a bunch of those operations wrong. If that happens, and yet they are still approved to be a surgeon, the probability that someone will die, I think, at some point is high.
Okay, I understand that, but that's a hypothetical. That doesn't mean it's happening.
I didn't say it's happening.
You didn't say it was happening.
I said it will. But I said if we lower status, people will die.
But why respond to something or put something out there that has not happened? Because I could say,
Because I don't want it to happen. I think we don't want to lower standards.
okay, if you look at the history of the medical industry, especially when it comes to black Americans, it shows the exact opposite. If you look at the Tuskegee experiment and on, only 5% of doctors are in America are black. All of them are white. So are you saying that if the majority of doctors are white, are you saying that and there's still these inequities, right? And there's still mistakes. Are you blaming DEI for that?
No, I'm very basically saying that if we lower standards for what it takes to become a board-certified surgeon or an oncologist or something where the kind of disease we're talking about, if you make a mistake, causes someone to die, then more people will die than if we don't lower the standards. Therefore, we should not lower the standards.
Why do you think they're lowering the standards for minority doctors or women doctors or?
That's what that's what that article suggested. Yes, at Duke University.
Okay. The evidence that I have shows that that's not true.
Okay.
So listen, after the door blew off, this.
Okay. So again, just just there right at the end. Well, the evidence I have says that that's not true. We'll move on. But it's one of those things. It's such an obvious point. And I didn't read the article that Elon Musk is talking about there, but I'd be interested to see it because you know that it happens at the university level already. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's happening in medical schools right now as we speak. But anyway, it's such an obvious point. It almost doesn't need to be explained, but yet it does. So this interview, after it was over, Don Lemon took to X to tell everybody how he had this partnership deal that was worked out with Elon Musk, but Elon Musk didn't like his interview so much that they canceled the partnership deal. And then Elon Musk said, I don't care if he puts his stuff up on X, but I'm just not going to pay for that kind of content because it's terrible. And then the funny thing about this was they had a list of Don Lemon's demands from X. It was something like $5 million a year. He wanted equity that lasted for at least 2 years in X. He wanted a Tesla Cybertruck. He wanted the opportunity to be the first podcast in space. It was a bunch of absolutely bonkers ideas that Don Lemon clearly thinks that he is worth more than he is because Elon Musk said, yeah, I'm not paying for that. Especially after the interview and realizing how terrible of an interviewer Don Lemon is. Elon Musk has said, why would I want to be in partnership with him? Don Lemon also wanted the ability to say who could and could not be partners with X and what their advertising could do, and basically wanted control over part of the company. Elon Musk said, no, absolutely not. Why would I give that to you? You haven't done anything to deserve it. This is the epitome, though, of people on the left, of leftist journalism. They're not interested in facts. They're not interested in reason. They come with their own agenda. They're not interested in digging to the truth of things. They are interested in pushing their own propaganda on people. They're not journalists anymore. There are no journalists anymore. Not really. It just seems like everyone has their own agenda. Anyway, I want to leave it there for the day. I'm glad I got to play these clips. I don't have a good solution or conclusion here today because I mostly just wanted to go over the interview. And the takeaway really is that none of the ideas of these people who are held up as guardians of democracy hold up to scrutiny. These journalists who think of themselves as the guardrails of democracy, these people who want to be in charge of things, they don't know anything. They don't know anything. They can't reason. They can't think in real time. And they're just bad at their jobs. And so I take a little bit of gratitude. Not gratitude. I take a little bit of solace in the fact that when I'm faced with these people who disagree with me, they all are just so lackluster. It makes me feel good because they're all so bad at what they do that they're so incompetent that it should be easy to beat them in the long run. And so thank Don Lemon for that. If we're ever going to thank Don Lemon for anything, let's thank him for the fact that he showcases how hollow and terrible the journalistic class really is at their jobs. And that's something that we can thank him for. Winnie, you see this cat? jumping all over the place over here. My goodness. All right. Anyway, we're going to leave it there for the day. As always, I'll catch you guys next Friday.